Let's take a look at both sides' advantages. With the Patriots, George Washington, as well as other military leaders, will be a major advantage. Even though Washington did not have a lot of experience, his leadership will be what holds the Continental Army together. His strategies will also help the Army to win several battles.
In general, the Patriots had the knowledge of the land. They knew the best routes to use and the most strategic places for ambushes. This was also their fight. They were fighting for their rights and then independence. This will be a huge motivator for people to join the war effort.
Through Indian attacks, hunting, and in general living on the frontier, the colonists will develop better shooting skills and the use of guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare had been used on the colonists by Indians for years. Instead of being in bright red jackets, they wore plain clothes that helped them to blend in with the environment. Also, they would use ambush tactics and sharpshooters who would hide in the trees.
The British, on the other hand, had a superior military. In fact, one of the best in the world. With the support of the British government behind them, the British had more money and therefore more resources.
The fact that the British also had superior numbers actually helped them to win some battles. When one soldier fell, another was there to take his place. The British also hired foreign soldiers from what is today Germany. These Hessians were known to have more ruthless tactics.
A strong navy by the British will help form a blockade along the coast of the colonies, preventing them from receiving much outside resources. The Indians also chose to side with mainly the British. Can you blame them? Between the two, the British were more likely to treat the Indians fairly.
Although most of the colonists supported the revolution, not everyone did. Some colonists chose to remain loyal to the British. These loyalists will prove to be a key advantage for the British.
Which group had the best advantage? What is the most important advantage to have? You need to write these answers on your flip classroom.
The blank right here is military leadership, George Washington. In guerrilla warfare tactics, wearing camo-type clothing, hiding in trees, and sneak attacks.
Now for the disadvantages. Although the Patriots had great leaders, they were still lacking in experience. Only a few colonists had joined the British in the French and Indian War. And to make matters worse, there really wasn't any time to train.
The lack of navy will be another deficit for the colonial army. They relied so heavily on other countries for supplies, but had a very difficult time acquiring these supplies because of the British blockade. What they did have were merchant ships that they strapped cannons on and used to fight the British.
It can't be said enough how much the Patriots struggle with not having enough resources. You've heard the quote, "Don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes." This wasn't for fun. It was actually very dangerous for the colonists to allow the enemy to get so close to them before firing. However, they didn't have much choice, as gunpowder was at a minimum. There will be many times when the army struggles for survival. Food, medicines, etc. will be at a constant shortage. Many colonial merchants sold to the British these supplies because they had money. George Washington himself will use his own money to pay for some supplies for the army. Remember, Congress doesn't have any power to raise taxes and therefore doesn't have any money with which to help the soldiers. Soldiers were paid with IOUs.
Those colonists who do not support the revolution, loyalists, will work to sabotage some of the Continental Army's efforts. Thankfully, the British too had some disadvantages. Their officers and soldiers did not have the passion to fight like the Patriots, so they didn't always take advantage of a victory, like capturing soldiers and officers. Instead, when the time clock said 5 o'clock, it was time to call it a day. This might be an exaggeration of how it was for the British military, but they were used to fighting according to the rules of war, and these rules stated that you didn't fight necessarily at night, during holidays, or etc.
The fact that they were so far from Britain made it difficult for them to get supplies. Also, America had a huge area to conquer. Think about the size of Britain compared to the 13 colonies. The colonies were huge. And unfortunately for these soldiers, traditional tactics like wearing bright red uniforms was a downfall for them. The red made them easy targets that could be seen from far away.
No blanks. Long Island was an extremely important battle. Long Island was a key port for both sides, and whomever controlled it would have a great location for trading purposes. Washington realizes the importance of controlling Long Island and moves the troops to control this area. British General William Howe leads the soldiers on the ground, and his brother Admiral Richard Howe leads the British Navy as they sweep in and force Washington to retreat.
Long Island will become the command post for the British. This was a huge defeat for the Patriots. In fact, the Patriots will lose most battles throughout 1776. By wintertime, the Continental Army is in trouble. Most soldiers are ready to leave their army because their enlistment was up. There's no food, they're sick, and all for what? The soldiers felt like nothing. Soldiers felt like nothing because they had lost so much. Okay? Washington is faced with the possibility of no army in January. So basically the soldiers are just ready to give up. It's been, they've mostly lost their battles. It's just been a very bad time.
Here are some statistics for you. There were 17,000 Americans versus 34,000 British, including their navy. Here's the song that the British sang over their victory for getting New York. Okay, your blank right here is Continental Army loses valuable New York, and Britain will make it a command post for British troops.
That's a long blank.
I know. You want me to say it again?
Probably.
Continental Army loses valuable New York, and Britain will make it a command post for the British troops.
All right, so we're going to discuss this painting in class just like we did the other painting, but you need to make sure you have some ideas. Who are these people? Where are they? What are they doing?
I have to say that these are two of my favorite battles. I love the tactics Washington uses. Remember, he is desperate for a victory to save his army. On Christmas night, 1776, Washington traveled with his troops across the Delaware River to New Jersey. He knows that the Hessians are camped outside of Trenton.
Around 3 a.m., Washington arrives at the Hessian camp. The Hessians were easily defeated. You see, they had been celebrating Christmas by drinking ale and feasting lavishly. This left them quite sleepy and completely unprepared for an attack. They wouldn't have suspected a thing, because remember, traditional war tactics would have dictated no battles on holidays. Washington and his troops were ecstatic with the victory.
Washington learns that British General Cornwallis is out for revenge for Trenton. He makes another genius plan. Outside of Princeton, Washington sets up camp. The troops make it appear as if they are sleeping by stuffing their blankets and leaving a few men behind and campfires burning. Meanwhile, the rest of the troops circled back around and hid among the trees. Sure enough, Cornwallis comes with his troops. Washington and the Continental Army surround Cornwallis. Surprise, surprise, Cornwallis. We got you. Well, actually, we got the troops. Cornwallis escaped.
The Continental Army was so excited. This is exactly what they needed to give them back hope. These victories, along with Washington's leadership, saves the war effort.
This is the song that they sang to the Hessian troops after Trenton.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your
election-appropriate song. Washington's leadership will save the war effort. With these victories and Washington's leadership, they convinced the soldiers to re-enlist. To help convince the troops to re-enlist, Washington reads The Crisis by Thomas Paine.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Thomas Paine. Okay, you need to answer the question here. What is a summer soldier and a sunshine patriot? Jot down your answer because we'll be talking about this in class.
Up here, your blank is Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine. Through determination, hard work, and excellent leadership, the colonists finally began to turn things around. This turning point towards colonial victory was known as the Battle of Saratoga.
The British have a brilliant plan to destroy the Continental Army. They are going to attack from 3 directions. If they are successful, it would completely cut off supplies from New England and divide the Americas.
The British had problems from the start. Army No. 1, led by British General St. Leger, and Army No. 2, led by British General Burgoyne, were both delayed coming from Canada. The Americans cut down trees to block the pathways, as well as set up snipers and harass the British.
This delay will cause timing problems for the rest of his plan.
Meanwhile, Army No. 3, led by British General Howe, will be delayed because of special orders from the King. The King wants Howe to stop in Philadelphia to capture the Continental Congress. Remember, this is where they've been commanding from.
Washington rushes in to intercept Howe. This leads to the battles of Brandywine and Germantown, which the Continental Army loses, but stalls Howe long enough to allow the Continental Congress to escape.
Here's a very traditional German polka the colonists played as a celebration for the Congress's escape. In this blank right here, you should have Philadelphia.
In the end of the grand British scheme, Burgoyne's army is the only one to arrive in Albany as scheduled. Burgoyne is met with a huge Patriot force led by Patriots General Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold. And yes, he's still a good guy, but not for much longer.
Dun 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 dun. Through bravery and tough fighting, the Patriots forced Burgoyne to surrender. This will be a huge victory for the colonists. This is what they have been waiting for, and this win will convince France to officially become our ally.
You see, Ben Franklin has been in France trying to convince them to form an alliance with the colonies. He's been partying it up with all the elite in France. Believe it or not, but Benjamin Franklin was quite the ladies' man, and he was quite popular with the French women. Even at the age of 69, Franklin's dance card was always filled. Now, he didn't just party, he actually worked very hard at convincing the French to help us out.
However, it wasn't until this win that they are finally convinced that the colonists do, in fact, have a chance to win this war, because France wouldn't have wanted to join the losing team.
This song is sung to symbolize the significance of this battle.
Right here, you should have turning point. Get the song, turn, turn, turn. Turning point in the war convinced France to become our ally.
All right, just like with every picture, We want you to analyze it and write down your thoughts because we're going to be talking about it in class. I want to know what you think is happening here.
We will discuss this in class as well. However, here is a song the colonists made in conjunction with the statue. Take the meaning however you would like. I didn't put it on there. Oh, no. Okay, all right. I guess I'll have to play the song for you in class because I forgot to put it on there. Darn it.
I know you're disappointed.
I'm so disappointed. It's a good song. At the end of 1777 and the beginning of 1778, Washington's troops will suffer through another horrendous experience at the Winter Valley Forge. We actually have a soundbite from that time period of the howling wind.
The Army is short on food, medicine, clothing, and so much more. Supplies from France have not yet arrived. 1 out of every 5 soldiers will die of disease or starvation. Even Martha Washington came out to Valley Forge to lend a hand helping in these hard times.
Times were so desperate that soldiers were forced to eat bark off trees. Most had worn out their shoes and were barefoot on the snow. As you can understand, some soldiers just deserted and went home. How could Washington argue with them? He couldn't provide enough shelter or supplies.